you are one of the lead, or you are the lead author of a document that I encourage all of you to read if you haven't, at the Art City Defenders website. It's a 37-page study of St. Louis municipal courts that explains some of the anger that African Americans feel about being targeted by police, about the municipal court system and the money that it generates. Explain what your white paper about municipal courts is all about, please.
So it's basically taking our clients' feelings about the way they're treated by the courts and the police at face value. These are their feelings. We've been studying this since 2009. We've been representing people in the municipal courts. They've been telling us since the very first day I've ever represented them that they are targeted because they're black, that they are exploited because they're poor, and that no one listens to their voice when they go to the courts. No one listens to their voice when the police stop them. And the final thing they say is, this is about the money. The municipal courts are about a revenue generation, not about the administration of justice. And so when we looked at it, I mean, frankly, when we talked to our clients, they told us some crazy things like they've been locked up because they couldn't pay their fines, been incarcerated because of the inability to pay fines. They told us their children weren't allowed in court and they were barred from court because they had their children with them. It wasn't things that folks, we were brand new lawyers in 2009. We didn't, to be honest, we didn't believe them. So we conducted a court watching program, and we saw much of what they said was actually reflected in our observations. And then we recorded some of this, their observations and our observations in this paper. And the data supports it too. When you look at Ferguson's budget and you see a line item for $2.65 million a year to be generated in revenue in their municipal court, it kind of leads you to believe that it is about the money. And it's the kind of thing that you can see in many of our municipal courts. Our study isn't limited to Ferguson. We believe it's a structural problem, and it's present throughout the region. But many of the things that our clients noted, told us, are supported by the data, supported by Chris Koster, Attorney General's study on racial disparity in traffic stops, are supported by the Office of State Court Administrators data about the number of warrants issued in Ferguson and Bell Ridge and Florissant. And I don't want to monopolize, but on Florissant, just briefly, they're one of those cities that we studied, the municipalities we studied, and just today I saw an article in the newspaper saying that they are going to increase their municipal ordinance fines by $10, and this is a quote from their mayor, in order to build a new courthouse in Florissant. So if there isn't a more explicit way of saying this is about increasing revenue for our municipality, I don't know what there is.
So at a time when elected officials and law enforcement institutions are asking the public for patience and to trust us and to trust the system, you've got an instance where a large segment of the population in St. Louis doesn't trust the system because of their personal interaction with it, and so there's no political capital for anyone to have faith in the system.
That's accurate. Our clients definitely believe they're being harassed. And now it's a moment after a tragedy with the death of Mike Brown. Regardless of how the case turns out, we don't know. But like you said, the same people that they believe have been pulling them over because they're black and exploiting them because they're poor are saying, please trust us. We're going to get to the right answer. Give us some time. Be patient with us. And I think it's reasonable for our clients and members of the community to be skeptical, at the very least, about what their officials are saying.
As elected officials, how do you bridge that credibility gap that seems to exist?
Well, as a former state representative, I think we have to take this moment and see what can we change in policy to be able to make sure that we are better on the other end. Mike Butler here succeeded me in the House in my seat, and there isn't a day or a week that goes by that I don't call him up and I say, hey Mike, this is a good idea for some legislation. We were just talking earlier about some ideas that can be floated to make this a better situation on the other end, like accrediting police departments the same way we accredit schools, like establishing minimum requirements for municipalities. This is a real turning point and our government structure is on the world stage for everyone to see how fragmented and how diffused the power structure is amongst North County municipalities. And these itty bitty cities, as I like to call them, were formed to get away from Black people who were moving to North County. Let's call it like it is. And this is a crucial moment for us to take a real hard look at, is this efficient government? And if it is not, and if the people can't trust the government that represents them, then maybe we need to take a look at some real reform.
And when you're taking a look, that look has to be from the actual citizens. So transparency is a very big part of this, but it can't just be transparency. It has to be oversight by citizens. A civilian review board has been something that's tossed around and been fought for quite some time in the city of St. Louis in these areas. Another thing that we have liked in the city of St. Louis is the neighborhood ownership model. We have community policing. We have folks policing themselves in their own neighborhoods. These are programs that have been very successful, but have not gotten any funding or any political will put behind them. So when the community has oversight over what's going on, as well as they are shared information exactly what's going on, then you don't have such a disconnect. The biggest problem that happened in Ferguson was not just the act. It was the fact that there was absolutely no transparency from the government that actually created that. And in fact, the irony of the whole situation was that a young man was shot, got in a scuffle with a police officer. A police officer approached him using heavy-handed tactics, and yet young people came to Ferguson to walk and march down the street and were approached by police officers using heavy-handed tactics. There was absolutely no change, no transparency, and no oversight by the citizens throughout this entire situation.
You know, there have been so many memorable images since August 9th. And one that sticks out in my mind was the mother of Michael Brown, the day of the shooting, and something she said about, "You don't know how hard I worked to get him to graduate from high school." Now that's something that many families in the St. Louis area take for granted, that their kids are going to graduate from high school. Mm-hmm. But there is a segment in the African American community where that's not a given for a variety of reasons. That statement by Michael Brown's mother, how does that factor into the larger conversation that we're having right now?
Oh, it factors in perfectly, because this situation was the pot that boiled over to a whole host of systemic things that were going on in our community that disenfranchised African Americans and minorities more than anyone else, more than any other group. Our education systems are subpar and not fully funded. Again, our government is diffused and fragmented. Our economic systems and the way we build out St. Louis favors white flight to suburbs such as St. Charles and O'Fallon. And when our transportation policies build more roads so they can fly west and fly north. And you know, all of these things are simmering. And this was just the pot that boiled over, this one situation to put all of our dirty laundry out there for everyone to see. And hopefully we will all work together to clean it up.
Well, you also have to listen to how the youth responded to that call. Of all places, Michael Brown just graduated from Normandy High School. And you had a lot of youth in that area saying, well, what's the point? What's the point? Even if I graduate, even if I do what the world's been telling me to do for the past 18, 17, 16 years, I can still get killed. I can die tomorrow. So of course I'm going to be very adamant about this situation. What's the point? What's the point of me living if even if I get education, if I graduate, I still can't. It ain't that I don't apply to college. I won't even make it because I won't be alive. The agony and the sense of hopelessness that came from youth, from that statement and from this action in this moment, it's something that cannot be forgotten. It's something that has to be listened to. We have to begin to listen to our youth. We have to get the solutions from them, not from people in a suit like me. We have to and that's what's been important about some of this movement, that folks like Tashar, myself, Tef Poe, and Brittany Packnett have been very adamant about getting the youth voices out, the youth solutions, because they think much differently than we ever have. They've been through so many different things than we can ever imagine, especially our parents and our grandparents.
Thomas, you immediately recognized that weekend that Michael Brown died, the significance of the document that you and others had been working on for months. Would you talk about that?
Well, it was just because we thought it would put some context to a lot of the frustration and anger that we saw on the streets in Ferguson and in Ferguson. And we believe that it's not just about Ferguson, it's about a broader problem in our entire region. This is not just North County. These structures that create negative contact between law enforcement and young people and people of color and poor people, it impacts our entire region. And to speak to your previous question about education and the difficulty of graduating, if you start at a very young age with some contact with law enforcement, keeping in mind that if you're like driving to high school, driving to the grocery store, you can drive through 8 municipalities in a stretch of 3 miles and get stopped by 8 different police departments, you're going to have some contact with law enforcement. And it might be a negative contact. And that's going to make it more difficult for you to continue on the path to graduate from high school and get into college. So what we saw from our clients, we thought we needed to get it out there so that people could understand at least one factor. We're not pretending like traffic tickets are the reason people are on the streets in Ferguson, but it's something where most people in our community, we're not talking about criminals, we're talking about poor people, and this is where they have contact with the justice system is municipal courts and the police. And those are their elected officials. That is their contact with their government, and they feel like they're being not treated humanely by those folks.